We often think of power collapsing with a bang. You imagine battlefields, fire, maybe a final glorious defeat. But sometimes it doesn't happen like that at all. Sometimes power just crumbles. It crumbles quietly under the weight of a failing strategy. And what we're going to unpack right now is one of those moments. A silent, unannounced, but absolutely game-changing shift in global power. So let's just get right to it. Here's the central paradox of this whole story. How does a nation with the most powerful military in the history of the world end up on the back foot? How does it find itself responding to terms set by an adversary, all without a single major battle ever being fought? That's the question, and it gets to the very heart of how power actually works in the 21st century. For centuries, power looked like one thing, right? It was about loud wars, clear winners and losers, and battlefield conquests. But today, the game has totally changed. The real arena for power isn't some battlefield anymore, it's the negotiation table. Victory isn't about taking over territory, it's about maneuvering your opponent into a strategic checkmate, where they literally have no choice but to accept the new reality you've created. So how did this silent defeat actually happen? Well, if you look at the geopolitical analysis, the key piece of evidence is a 10-point plan proposed by Iran, a plan the US reportedly agreed to use as a basis for talks. And this wasn't just some list of suggestions. No, if this analysis is correct, this was basically the script for a whole new reality, a war won entirely without firing a single shot. And this is absolutely crucial. Wait a minute. When you really dig into the terms of this plan, you start to realize something. This is not the plea of a weakened nation that's begging for peace. This is written with the confidence, the authority of a player who knows they're holding all the best cards. It's the language itself that signals a massive, tectonic shift in the balance of power. And that perception, well, that's often more powerful than the reality on the ground. What's really fascinating here, what the analysis points out, is just how brilliantly this plan is structured. It's not some random shopping list of demands. It's a full-blown 3-act strategy. First, demand security, to shut the door on past conflicts. Second, control the region to dominate the present. And third, write the future, but on your own terms. Let's break down each of these acts. Okay, Act 1. This is all about finality. It's about slamming the door shut on the past. It demands an absolute guarantee against any future attacks. We're not talking about a temporary pause here. This is a demand to permanently end the war. And here's the kicker. An end to all US sanctions, not just easing them up, completely dismantling the primary economic weapon the West has been using for decades. It's about closing the book for good. Now, Act 2 is where things get really bold. It moves from just protecting themselves to actually controlling the region. This is about carving out a sphere of influence. By demanding a stop to any confrontations with its allies, Iran is in effect forcing the United States to officially recognize its role as a regional power broker. It's basically them drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is our neighborhood, these are our partners, and from now on, you will respect our influence here. This changes everything. And that brings us to Act 3, which is maybe the most audacious part of the whole thing. This is where they're not just ending a conflict, they're literally designing the peace that comes after, proposing to reopen a critical global waterway, but with brand new rules, creating new kinds of partnerships, and completely flipping the old script from revenge to reconstruction. Let's zoom in on the most jaw-dropping detail. $2 million. Think about that. $2 million for one single ship to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This is an absolutely stunning economic power play. It's not just a toll, it's a declaration that control over the world's economic arteries is shifting. Power is no longer just about who has the most aircraft carriers. It's about who controls the flow of goods and who gets to set the price for access. The irony is unreal. So, what in the world does this all mean for the future of conflict? Well, it means we have to throw out the old rulebook. We are entering an era where the most important battles are won or lost long before anyone even thinks about deploying troops. The real battlefield is now the negotiation table, and the weapons are strategy, economic leverage, and, frankly, the courage to be the one who sets the terms. And this really shows you the difference, doesn't it? The old idea of victory was simple. You conquer some territory, you plant a flag. Done. But the new way? It's all about that diplomatic checkmate. It's about maneuvering your opponent into a position where their only logical move left is to accept the new world you've just designed for them. And it's not just victory that's changing, it's what comes after. Historically, the winner would demand revenge or crippling payments. But this new model, it's revolutionary. Instead of a war chest, the revenue from the Strait of Hormuz would actually fund regional reconstruction.
and it would be shared with partners like Oman. You're turning a point of conflict into a source of shared wealth. It's not about one side winning anymore, it's about building something new together.
What the United States might be experiencing here, according to this analysis, is something called narrative collapse. It's that moment when the story a country tells about itself, the story of being the invincible, unchallengeable global leader, suddenly just doesn't match up with reality anymore. It's when your actions become reactive instead of proactive, and that's a huge sign that your narrative is broken, forcing you to play by a script that someone else wrote for the first time.
And if you're a student of history, this whole thing probably sounds eerily familiar. Because this isn't the first time a great power has felt its dominance quietly slip away, not in some big dramatic battle, but through a slow erosion of its strategic edge. To really get what might be happening today, we can look back to one of the most famous declines in history.
That's the big lesson from Rome, isn't it? The Roman Empire didn't just collapse because of so-called barbarian invasions. No, it fell because its internal strategy, its political and economic core, was already crumbling from the inside out. Its prestige was fragile. By the time the legions were losing on the frontiers, the real war had already been lost back home, thanks to overreach and strategic exhaustion. A weak strategy makes even the mightiest army meaningless.
And that really is the heart of this silent defeat. We expect the fall of empires to be loud and violent and full of cinematic final stands. But maybe, just maybe, the most profound shifts in history don't make a sound. They happen quietly, in back rooms where terms are dictated and accepted, where entire narratives are taken apart not by armies, but by the quiet force of a new reality. So what does this mean for the world order? Look, if this analysis holds up, we're not just watching some regional squabbles cool down. We are watching the first real, visible cracks appear in the wall of a Western-dominated world. This could very well be the tangible beginning of a new global order, a historic shift in dominance from the West to the East. Let's be perfectly clear. This is what a power shift actually looks like in the 21st century. You're watching history unfold, not with a bang, but with the quiet signing of a document. Forget grand invasions. A real power shift today is a set of terms, a strategic maneuver that reorders the entire world without a single headline-grabbing battle. It's subtle, it's intellectual, and yeah, it might just be irreversible. And that brings us to the burning truth of this new era we're in. For centuries, power was defined by the missile. Today, power is the pen. True, lasting power belongs to those with the strategic vision and the sheer audacity to define the terms of the peace. The ultimate weapon is no longer a warhead. It's a single, perfectly crafted sentence in a document that your opponent simply has to accept. So the final question, that's for you to think about. Is this just an isolated event, a clever diplomatic play in a long-running rivalry? Or are we standing at a major historical turning point, witnessing the very first light of a new Eastern-centric world? The answer to that question, well, it's going to define the rest of our century.